A school record 13 wins for Wisconsin last year, their first undefeated regular season since back in 12. And yes, that's 1912. Paul Chryst team loaded again offensively, particularly up front. The defense has some question marks, some offseason injuries, but remember, second in the nation in total D a season ago. And we are very pleased to be joined by the head coach of the Badgers, Paul Chryst. Coach, you were the West champs. You were one score away from being in the playoff last year. How do you use that season as a motivator, as a springboard into this season?
Well, I think all of them, you try to draw off of your experiences. And, we've got a number of players that went through that season last year and understand what it takes to give yourself that chance. And, I don't think that anything really carries over other than your experiences. And, T.J. Edwards and Dakota Dixon and Michael Dieter are the three players here now. They've got a number of years of experiences. And, whether it's what it took to win those games or maybe what can be the difference when in a game you lost, you try to just put them all into an area we can learn from. And that's our job, to help them continue to grow.
There's still 18 to 22-year-olds, though, and they're heavily favored to win the West, and you've had so much success. I mean, there has to be some concern about complacency, or we invented the game. Do you address that, or do you think it's not an issue?
No, I mean, it and you've been around it. I think as coaches, you try to address almost everything. But I also think you got to stay consistent, and your messaging has to be consistent, and then they can believe it. And so I think our messaging has been consistent for a number of years, and if you really think about what we say, it doesn't matter what's happening. It's how you approach it and move forward. And they know that they understand that there's talk going on, and they also need to be smart enough to know that that doesn't matter. And the beautiful thing about the game of football is it still comes down to your actions and what you do, and you get to play a game and put all your energy and focus on that.
Sometimes offensively, Alex will put the ball in danger, turn it over. What have you guys gone through or done to try to eliminate that part of it? Interceptions happen.
Right.
But what do you guys do specifically to try to eliminate those things?
I think that, one, you go right back to the film. And the off-season's a great time to go through, and these are the things that you did really well, and these are the things that if we can improve upon, and these are the things you've got to eliminate, and all those. And then when you stack it to 2 years, like for him, it's powerful when you can put 2 years of film. And what I love so much about Alex is he wants to be a great quarterback, and he doesn't want to be it just for him. I think he truly cares about this team, and our team cares about him. And so no one wants to. There's no quarterback that wants to throw that pick, and there's no back that wants to put the ball on the ground. And you want it to sting, and that's how you can learn from it. But I think that there's a fine line. But I think you just want to make it simple. What's causing it? Is it the hesitation, and how can you eliminate that? It's not just we don't want the result to be this. It's try to identify what leads up to those things. Is it trusting the receiver? Is it maybe trusting his arm too much, not enough? All those things, you go into it. And that's what's fun working with him, because he's got experience and he draws upon it.
It's also got to be fun that he has this attitude that if something bad goes wrong, it doesn't affect him.
Right.
That next series, he comes out and will have a great series. Is that something he's always had since he's got to you, or that kind of developed there as well?
I think it's both. I think he's had it. It's part of who he is. But it's easy to say this is how you want to handle it. This is what naturally, when those moments come in, there's some of those are hard moments, and so I give him a lot of credit for maintaining that. And it's not just when something negative happens. He does a great job when something really good happens. I think of celebrating it and then getting back to kind of who he is. That's all you really want your players to be, is to play within their own personality. And that's what's kind of fun, is you got a lot of different personalities, so your team can take on a lot of different personalities. But for Alex, that works for him, and I think it's genuine now.
Coach, I've had some young guys on the defensive line we might see that we haven't seen a lot of.
It's obviously, Olive Sagapalo has played a lot of football, and it's kind of fun now to see him have to take on a leadership role. Even though he was a junior last year, you got 3 seniors, no one's really looking to him. And certainly, Isaiah Loudermilk is a guy that played some last year, and he'll be a good player. It's unfortunate what happened with Garrett Rand, and and yet, it's an opportunity for others to step up. A kid that redshirted last year, Aaron Vopel's got a chance, and David Pfaff, Craig Howard, guys that have been waiting for their chance. Well, here it is. It's now, and we've moved Caden Lyles, who's a really good offensive lineman. We moved him to defense. I think he's a guy that can impact it. And then you've got some freshmen that, Bryson Williams is a lineman that came in early, so he's here for spring ball. But that's going to be one of the things in fall camp to find out really who are those that can step up and step into those roles, and then if they can, how many snaps are they? Is this a 5-snap guy? Is this a 10-snap guy? Is this a 25-snap guy? Is this a starter? So that's we've got our questions we need to answer to.
It's been fun to watch this from a defensive standpoint. That you guys just seem to be able to plug and play. I know these guys are being developed, but it just seems like, okay, next man up, here we go.
Yeah, we don't want to push the envelope too far, right?
How do you get to that, though?
You really do have to give it's the people involved, and I've been fortunate in the last 3 seasons. We've had 3 really good defensive coordinators, and yet there's a chance when one leaves for there to be a hiccup, and I think guys just kind of make it work, and I think the players have an understanding, and I also think that they know that it doesn't just happen. Like, you've got to work for it, and I think that's been passed on, and we've got to make sure they keep understanding that, and then I think too, when there's a standard, and if you've got enough guys that can kind of know what that standard is and hold them to it, I think that helps kind of that learning curve. But it's people that make it happen.
So you're so veteran on offense, you're young, as we're talking about on defense. Does it impact the way you call the game early in the season to protect your defense in any way?
I think that's something that we're going to find out, right? You don't know what's going to come down the road. But I think that there's a chance that this team's going to have to learn to play differently, to win differently, whatever that may be. And yet, you know what? There's a chance that we don't know, right? There's a chance that our defense, and we're excited about those that maybe people haven't heard about, but to get their opportunity and go, and certainly there's some that, what a great starting point when you got TJ Edwards and Ryan Connolly and Dakota right behind them, but you don't know. And so I think that's something that we've got to figure out as a team is how are we going to win? How do we best complement each other?
Historically, O-lineman at the badge, outstanding leader. But this line, it looks like, may have an opportunity to be the best 5 that have played. Could that be possible? Huh?
It's possible, but that's a high bar. And I've been lucky to be around some of those teams, and you appreciate. I've loved being able to see their growth because you guys saw, this same group when they were playing, that wasn't what everyone historically would talk about. And so it's fun to have seen all that went into it and getting to the point. And I think that they've done enough to. You can be part of that barroom discussion, but they got to prove it, and that's the fun thing, right? That's a high bar, and there's been a couple of those where every guy went on. So
yeah,
I'm all for it.
Thoughts on the new recruiting rules, even though you haven't been through an entire year? What do you think?
I thought we had great visits this summer, and I appreciated the amount of time that you can spend with the recruits, which is very different than, you're coming off the road and you got a weekend. And I thought for our players that were hosting, summer is a more relaxed time. So I thought some of the demands on them was a little bit lessened. And so we had great experiences with it. I think, like you said, we're all still trying to understand it. And probably to a fault, all of us coaches probably try to overthink and what's this mean and what. But I thought there was really good visits, and certainly everything's being accelerated, and maybe not all for the better, but it's kind of what's happening. So I think that we have to kind of embrace it and do the best we can. And you still, in the end, you want to make sure that kids learn as much about your place as they can, and I think it's still about a fit. And so. Our experience this summer, I thought it was really good, and yet I think there's still a lot that, it's kind of exciting. People are trying to make it right. They're trying to do what's right for prospective student athletes and our current ones, and it's a good starting point.
Madison probably shows pretty good in the summer. Huh?
You think?
It shows well all the time.
Maybe a little better in the summer, though.
I'm a summer guy.
He had to go somewhere.
All the time.
Yes.
We can be honest with one another. Coach, you look at this offense. I mean, we've already talked about the offensive line being maybe the best you've been around. We talked about the improvement of
You
Alex
guys talked
Hornibrook.
about that.
There's a collective we. The wide receiver group is outstanding. I think, Howard and I were talking yesterday, maybe the best that we've seen, or potentially the best during this recent era at Wisconsin. You had a back who ran for nearly 2,000 yards last year as a freshman. I don't see any obvious holes there. I mean, when you're thinking about the offense, is there anything that worries you or keeps you up at all at night?
I think, you've got to go do it again. And it's interesting. I do like the group, and there's experience that they can draw on. And yet, like JT could have a great season and not have near the numbers.
Right.
And can everyone handle that? And I do think that the challenge, that's an offense that's had a great defense with them. And so we don't know. How is this year going to be? And, maybe it's time to pay back the defense a little bit. And this is how we do it. I don't know. And that's the exciting thing. Every season you go into it and, they say, well, you're excited for the season. You're excited because you really don't know what's coming down. It's a journey, and how your players and we as coaches kind of navigate the season. That's a fun thing.
We talked about on defense, kind of the relative lack of experience up front, compounded by some injury issues. Right. Linebacker, you bring back a fair amount. The secondary seems like it would be the area of concern. We know about Dakota Dixon, who's an outstanding player. On top of that, who are some of the names that we might see emerge?
Scott Nelson is a safety. Patrick Johnson, Eric Burrell, some younger safeties. I'll back up, and I really think that maybe you're hoping for this a little bit, but where our receivers were a year and a half ago is where the DBs are. There's a chance. We're excited about who they are. Dante Carrier-Williams has played some snaps. We're excited about some of the young players, but they haven't played. And so this is their opportunity, and it's our job. I feel great, certainly with, Jimmy and his knowledge base and how he approached it. I think for a young DB to feel confident and gain confidence, I feel great with him being the one in charge of that group.
How do you maintain Taylor's just the expectations? Not so much him, but the expectations around. You just touched on it. He has this monster freshman year. You're kind of waiting, okay, well, can the body hold up?
Right.
But the body holds up the entire year. So how do you manage that expectation? Because a lot of people are going to assume that you should be able to put those numbers up again, coupled with an outstanding offensive line, experienced quarterback, wide receivers.
Yeah.
But as you mentioned, the numbers could very easily not be what they were last year.
Right. And I think the biggest thing you do is you focus on him and you focus on our team. And that's where JT takes so much pressure off you as a coach, because he's an unbelievable teammate. And he is one of the hardest, if not the hardest working players on the team. And so I think if he knows where you're at, and if you're not you're not, and he's got to deal with, and I thought that's why I gave him credit, not only what he did as a player, but to be able to handle all the stuff around it. I thought that last year he learned a lot, and I thought he handled it well. And so he's got that experience, but because the outside world, the messaging, you don't want that to confuse with what's happening for him. So I think for us, it's just to have great focus and conversation and attention with him, and yet he's a smart kid, so you know he gets it. Yeah. You appreciate that.
Wisconsin head coach Paul Chryst, always a pleasure to visit with you. Thanks, Coach, and we look forward to seeing you up in Madison.
Thanks so much. I look forward to you guys coming up.
We're going to have some fun.